Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Cub Master Chris. We're back in the shop, as you can see. We're here to talk about hand tools once again. It's part 2 of our hand tools section here on Corona Cub Scout Corner. So if you're here last time, you remember. If not, go back and check it out on YouTube. You remember what we started packing in our toolbox, right? So we started with some hammers. We got a 16-ounce claw hammer and we have a dead blow hammer. We have these, which a lot of people call channel locks, but they're an adjustable plier. We have needle nose pliers. We have slip jaw pliers. We have a Phillips and a flathead screwdriver. We have a carpenter's pencil, a utility knife, and a tape measure. There are a few other things that I think are super important to have in my toolbox. So one of them is a clamp, but there are so many different kinds. Just like everything, there's so many varieties, how big, how small. So the two that I would pick are, I'd say, a medium size. There are ones that adjust by just squeezing them, but I don't feel you get enough pressure. So this is a bar clamp, right? So that's a bar clamp versus a C clamp, okay? This is a C clamp. I know it looks like a G, but it's a C clamp. Okay, so the ones I would pick is this style that has the turn knob to tighten. It seems to be a little better clamp. You better get a little better clamp on wherever you're clamping, a little firmer. Also, the C clamp is a lot firmer. Okay, you also need to be careful that you don't dent whatever you're trying to clamp with these clamps. Okay, so another thing that I would take are these things here. Ever seen these? People call these vice grips. Actually, locking pliers. Vice grips, again, is the name brand. So these are locking pliers, and there's a ton of different varieties. There's ones that lock down to your workbench. This style here. I mean, there's so many different varieties. But again, locking jaw pliers. We're going to set a set of those in. The next thing that I would put in is tin snips. Why, you ask, tin snips? We're doing woodworking. Okay, so my kit I'm putting together is in case I have to fix something. In case I go into somewhere and something's wrong, these are great for cutting all sorts of things. Can I cut a little wire with it? Yes. Can I cut some really light gauge steel, like a tin can? Yes. Aluminum? Yes. Okay, so they're super handy to have. The next thing that I like to have, this is important, is levels. So these are some smaller ones. The torpedo level. Good drop. Torpedo level and a 2-foot level. Okay, so like in my toolboxes for travel, this is just a small toolbox. On my truck, I always carry a 4-foot, a 2-foot, and a torpedo. But in my toolbox, if I can fit them, if space allows, I would do a 2-foot and a torpedo level. So the next thing I go after is a flat bar. What is a flat bar? This is a flat bar. See this little hole allows you to pull nails out. This also allows you to pull nails. And to pull nails. A little more prying, a little more leverage here, right? So these are very handy to have. A chisel. Now, a chisel is not used to chisel rock. It is not used to chisel steel or to get screws out or to get nails out. A chisel is a precision instrument, and it's used for wood only. We should take care of this like it's our pocket knife, not just throw it in the bottom, right? There should be a protection on this if it's in your toolbox. So go along with that is a wood rasp. If you're doing any shaping, and we'll talk about this when we're going to do an episode on Pinewood Derby cars, you can shape your Pinewood Derby car with this. So if you look, it's kind of like a file, but it's made for wood. Okay. So speaking of file, I would take a file. A file is a good thing to have in my basic toolkit because I may need it to sharpen my chisel. Okay, there may be a lot of different uses you'll find with this, so that's in my basic toolkit for sure. A hand drill. We've all seen these at camp, haven't we? This is your basic hand drill. Why don't you put a corded one or a cordless one in there, Cub Master Chris? Because this one never needs an outlet and this one never needs a battery. And I can drill a pilot hole in case I want to put a nail in without splitting the wood. Very handy to have in your tool. Okay, so next thing is a square. This, I can't tell you how often I use a square. What is a square for? And it doesn't look like a square, it looks like a triangle. Why are you calling it a square? Okay, so let's just suppose we have this piece of wood and we want to cut it off. See, if you look at it, you'll see the top is slanted, isn't it? We want that cut square, thus square, why it's called a square. Okay, so if I put that on the edge, you'll notice it is not square. This edge is not square to this edge, is it? Okay, so this is the item we're going to use to mark that. Now, I mark it. See my line? You see my line? Okay, so I would cut on that line. I'd have a square piece of wood. So this is a very handy item to have. And that's called a speed square. There's other kinds of squares, but that's a speed square, and that's the most common one I use. Anybody know what these are? They're kind of a wire cutter. They're kind of a wire cutter is exactly right. So that's what they're made for. They're side cutters, right? They're going to cut a wire, not steel, wire only, okay? So these are handy to have because you never know when you're going to need them. And you just don't think you're going to need them that often, and you wish you had them in your kit. So I always keep them in my kit. Another thing I keep in there is an awl. What is an awl? An awl is kind of like a screwdriver to a point, right? So what do we use that for? We use that for marking our lines. We could use that to start a screw, because a lot of times it's hard to get those screws started. We use that to start the screw, okay? So let's go through one more thing that I want to add to my box. It'd be a saw. So I don't have a saw in here. Well, let's go get one of those cordless circular saws. Absolutely not. We're doing hand tools. So what kind of saw should I put in there? Here's a saw. Let's just put that saw in. Negative. Why? Because this is not for wood. Everybody, I'm sure, has seen this type of saw. This is a hacksaw. This hacksaw is used for only cutting metal. Okay, so no, I'm not going to put it in my hand tool bag because it's not the most common saw I use. How about this one? Kind of cool, isn't it? What do you use that for? Okay, see, I can change the angle here. This is made for cutting corners. So you get it in the slot. Get it in the slot, you can cut your piece of wood. Okay, all right. This is used for cutting molding or cutting an angle or cutting a nice square piece cut on the end of your piece. Okay, is this something that I keep in my hand toolbox? Not necessarily. I'll usually grab more for a rip saw, right? One that I'm just going to cut a 2x4 or cut something off quick. Again, this is only a wood saw. So this one, if I'm going to cut trimming and I don't have my professional saw with me, I'll use this one. Okay, so let's go through what's in our box. We just went over the saw. Good idea, right? So we got some levels. We've got a torpedo and a 2-foot. We've got a couple of clamps. We've got a C-clamp and a bar clamp. We've got some side cutters. We've got a nice chisel. We've got a wood rasp. We've got a speed square. We've got a hand drill, a flat bar, a file. This is just a tapered file. Some adjustable pliers. Some slip joint pliers, some tin snips, locking pliers, right? A Phillips tip and a flat tip screwdriver, needle nose pliers, utility knife, tape measure, claw hammer, 16 ounce, and a dead blow hammer. That is what I would put in my toolbox, right there. All right, thank you for joining me on this episode. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. We'll talk about something a little bit different. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, be kind to one another. We'll see you tomorrow.